watching the Doom Dance right now, which is very funny. Are they still doing the Doom Dance? Oh, and then he goes, and then he closes the thing. But all the hot influencers come from fucking Sweden. Look at, here's the Doom Dance, everybody. We're back at it. This is a fucking brutal dance right here, baby. This dance is so metal. That shit is pretty funny though. Thank you, Pepe, for turning us on to the Doom Dance. The Doom Dance. Now we're gonna check out a little bit of this band. We'll check out a little bit of this. A little bit of this band called Mayhem. Now these guys are Norwegian. I'm not sure exactly where they're from. I'm not sure if they're from. Hey Mike, what grade is your son going into this year? Was just curious. My son had an orientation. Saucy's is going into 4th grade, so he's currently in 4th grade. And they're done for the weekend because my son homeschools, so they actually are done until Tuesday or Wednesday. Or no, she said they worked ahead until Thursday, so they're actually pretty good. Yeah. What up, my sports enthusiast homie? Okay, let's check out a little bit. The darkest band in history, Mayhem. These guys are fucking legit hardcore, morbid musicians. Thank you for the shout outs, Robbie.
Black metal has become one of the most talked about, controversial subgenres over the last few decades. Its history is so long, rich, and confusing that even trying to dissect the genre as a whole is a task that many music journalists have failed at. But there is one man that has so many ties to the genre, and such an influence on the music, that merely talking about him and the band he was a part of is a crash course into the history of black metal itself. This man was Eystein Aarseth, otherwise known as Euronymous. He was the co-founder of the Norwegian band known as Mayhem, a notorious group that had an intense influence on the scene as a whole, and he perfectly encapsulated the absolute insanity that some of these black metal icons took part in. His extreme antics, nihilistic nature, and abrasive persona made him stand out like a sore thumb in a genre that was already pretty intense to begin with.
Hey. They not black. How are they gonna be the darkest musician? Ow! Where do we apply GG Allin at? Now, GG Allin's more of punk rock. He's more of the punk scene, and that's like this is right around the same time. And he's more New York scene, so he's like the gutter punk shit, man. GG Allin, if you guys don't know who GG Allin is, GG Allin was like one of the most fucking just punkiest punk rockers that ever fucking existed. He took a microphone to his mouth, bit it, and then smashed it in so his teeth were forever just fucking ravaged. He used to like throw feces at the audience. He used to run out into the audience, just start punching bitches, like literally punching women too, like punching dudes. He did not give a fuck. We can look into GG Allin a little bit, but because I just saw something on GG Allin in the thumbnail for it, and I was thinking like we should probably go to GG Allin next because just the ruthlessness that metal and punk and all these things invoke is very, very visceral, man. And I remember as a young kid yelling, in my room along with Marilyn Manson and fucking, Metallica and shit, just jumping around, being crazy. It does invoke some real high energy shit. And that those vibrations can beckon, I think, some real dark shit. So, we'll start over here with Mayhem, and then we'll groove on over to GG Allin too. GG stands for God's gift. God's gift to Allin. He'll stick a turkey baster up his asshole.
All of these elements would eventually combine to a shocking conclusion in 1993 when Euronymous was killed by his own bandmate. But we have about 1,000 other crazy things to talk about before we get to that point. So strap in and join me as we have a look at the insane life of one of black metal's biggest icons.
Let's go. The early days.
On the 22nd of March 1968, Eystein Aarseth was born in Egersund, Norway, a small town in the south that had actually been broken up and divided 3 years prior.
Oh, this is
meaning
Norway.
that the population of the town he grew up in was only...
How far is Norway? Hey, Mighty. How far is Norway from Sweden, Pepe? Because you're just like, Norway. Are they like so far away? Are they not even in? Oh no, they're like right next to each other. Okay, I see. Because Norwegian is these over here. Okay, cool. Neighbors. Thank you very much, buddy. Yeah, look, you guys almost have the same fucking flag too. Could you be a little bit more original? Sweden/Norway. Okay. So these are Norwegian, and Candlemass was Swedish. So these guys are neighbors, and they all probably hung in the same circles, I'm guessing, since these two countries are kind of small, and I'm sure the scene was kind of small there as well. Mighty, how you been? I hope you're doing well. Welcome in. We're just learning about Black Mass or not Black Mass. We're just learning about these dark bands that existed.
Around 3,700 people. Very little is known about his childhood, as is the case with many black metal musicians, but what is known is that Aarseth rebelled from the conventional norms of his small town from an early age, and he was inspired by other metal bands, like many of his contemporaries. One of these bands was an English group known as Venom, based in Newcastle. Venom was also trying to escape from the conventional norms that they felt trapped in, but instead of breaking away from society, they were actually trying to break away from metal itself. They wanted to take everything up a notch, from their sound to their imagery, and that's exactly what they did on their sophomore album, released in 1982, which was actually called Black Metal. It was an 11-track album that was filled with satanic imagery, shocking lyrics, and louder, more extreme production that would prove to be hugely influential to thrash metal, extreme metal, and of course, black metal, even lending the name to the genre. A 22-year-old Euronymous, desperate to rebel and do something similar, would be hugely influenced by this album.
What a good-looking young man. He's a good-looking young dude.
And would cite it as one of his main inspirations for starting his own band with some friends in 1984. This band was called Mayhem, which was derived from a Venom song titled Mayhem with Mercy. And it was started by drummer Shekel Monheim, who simply called himself by his second name, bassist Jorn Stubberud, otherwise known as Necro Butcher, and Eystein, who played the guitar.
That's okay, Mighty.
And originally called himself Destructor, but later changed his name to Euronymous. These three would have a rocky few years at the beginning, with a number of different vocalists that would make some of their earlier releases inconsistent but interesting nonetheless. They would attract a small but loyal underground following and perform at some local venues, but the most important thing they did was build the foundation for what Mayhem were to become. It was only a matter of time before everybody in Norway was talking about Mayhem and black metal in general, although this wasn't necessarily a good thing.
Why wasn't it a good thing?
In the beginning, Mayhem performed covers of songs by groups that they were inspired by. In an interview with Necro Butcher, he claims that they were essentially learning the instruments as they went, and that their sound was closer to punk than to metal. They had not yet found their dark sound, and this boils down to inexperience and their vocalists.
You know, it's funny. You'll see a lot of beginner musicians gravitate towards punk, because it's not a hard genre to play. I mean, it's hard to make good punk songs, but to just play bar chords where it's just your root and your fifth and your root again. So like if it's an A, right, you're going to hit the A and then you're going to have the E on the guitar and then you're going to hit the A again, the octave of the A. So they're just power chords. It's easy to grasp, you know, as long as your drummer can keep up, you're good to go. So you do see people, like, I was just thinking about this the other day. My first punk band was called Captain Black. And if you guys don't know what Captain Black is, it's a certain type of pipe tobacco. And it's actually not bad pipe tobacco. I like pipe tobacco. It smells good. My ADHD is flaring up. Because all of a sudden I just want to talk about pipe tobacco, but we're not going to talk about pipe tobacco. Anyways, there was a couple people in the band who were very new to their instrument, and the only thing that they could really do was make bar chords and play these cards. So I joined a punk band, and we had a few songs, and we played a couple shows. We played at my high school, where I was so fucking... I drank a pint or maybe a half pint of 151. If you guys know what Bacardi 151, it's really hard to get Mike off top. Yeah, thank you, Robbie. I drank about half a pint, and as a young man, I was probably like 17 or 18, and we're playing that was my drinkage. It's so gross. It's so gross. Yeah, 151 and Coke. Yeah, I used to get 151 and diet. Because I couldn't handle all the sugar. It gets you fucked up. It does. Yes. Burns blue. That's how disgusting it is. Well, cleaner gas burns blue, I guess. So I guess that's because it's so high with the alcohol content. Anywho, I remember getting so fucking wasted, and I'm swearing on the mic. I'm yelling into the mic. I'm telling them, I'm telling everybody to say fuck you to your teachers. It was very, very punk rock of me. But then the cops came, and then they were like asking me questions, and blue Italian. Ooh, look at that. Blue is my favorite color. The cops came, and I don't know, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, how did I get away with so many drunken fiascos as a young man, where I was underage and illegally wasted? How did that happen? How did they not smell it on me? Because if you come anywhere near somebody who's been drinking, like it just wafts right into your face, like a fart, right? Like you just smell it. Or if someone's been drinking the night before and they come in and they're still a little hungover, you can smell the fucking booze on them. How did I get away with this? Because the cop was like doing the eye check, and he was like trying to smell my breath and all this shit. I was high. I was drunk. I was underage. Like I wasn't even 18 yet. Maybe I was just 18. I don't even know what it was. Cover it up with ganja. Yeah. And back then in Ohio, weed was very illegal. You went to jail if they found weed on you in Ohio at this moment. So I don't know. Maybe it's just, maybe I was just young and my alcoholicness didn't catch up with me yet. Because I know like now if I drink, the next day I smell like a brewery, and like I'm not getting, same over. Yeah, exactly, Nader. You know what it's like. You remember the days when people were like, keep it down. Where's the money? You had to meet in weird, like, shady places and weird alleys in the parking lot of the mall. It's like, keep the money down. What do you do, bro? You know, just the whole fucking thing is just terrible. Because you have to use your Baby Yoda Jedi powers. That's how I escaped all my police interactions. $750 for paraphernalia, and any amount under 4 grams, $750. I got caught with a bowl and had to pay like $400, or at least my parents did. Don't ask me how I know. So $700 for a seed? Jesus. Yeah, you couldn't find seeds. If they found seeds in your car, I mean, you were fucked. It was just so awful, man. Like, weed used to be like fucking heroin. They couldn't find anything else good. Fuck them. Shoo me. And my drug dealer always kicked at the library, the most safe place in the world for drug dealers. They were pissed. Good. I'm glad they were pissed. Hope the rest of your day is better. Oh, mighty. I got it dropped. Yeah, I think I just had to pay a fine and they dropped it and expunged it, but I don't remember what it was. I don't remember. Whatever. It was so long ago. In any case, musicians who just started out and they're trying to be in bands and stuff, they'll tend to be in like rock or punk bands because it's kind of easy to play. But to make good songs, like good punk songs, it's not easy. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to negate the whole genre because there are great punk bands who write great punk songs, and it doesn't have to be some complicated thing. It can just be like 2 chords or 1 chord, as long as there's something going on and the melody's good, people will catch on. Anyways, back to the show.
On their first demo, Euronymous was their lead vocalist,
SLC
but after
punk.
it was released, they decided to search for some session vocalists to improve their sound. The 2 that they found were Eric Billy Norheim, otherwise known as Messiah, and Sven Erik Christensen, otherwise known as Maniac. Norheim practiced with them multiple times, but only played 1 show with them in 1985 before eventually quitting to focus on other musical endeavors. Maniac, on the other hand, stayed with the band for a few years and was their lead vocalist when they recorded their first EP in 1987, known as Death Crush. This 7-track project definitely had darker undertones than most metal records at the time, but it was only a glimpse into the shocking music that Mayhem were truly capable of making. While some of their lyrics were dark and satanic, the instrumentation was a bit less abrasive and the imagery was a bit more low-key and toned down, but the EP was still very raw. In the book known as Black Metal, Evolution of the Cult by Dale Peterson, Monheim stated that the sound technician they worked with had never recorded music that was this heavy and basically didn't know how to record it properly. This also meant that the music was not mixed and that nothing was overdubbed. Today, this would be a cardinal sin in the world of music, but in this case, it actually helped the record sound more raw and authentic, and it made for a pretty decent death metal EP that sold around 1,000 copies in Norway. Still,
fucking flying off the shelves. 1,000 copies in Norway, which is actually, I mean, imagine right now if a band sells like 1,000 downloads on iTunes, they'll be like number 1 on iTunes national charts. So 1,000 albums is not bad. If they're selling them for $10 a piece, that's $10,000. $5 is $5,000. Obviously, you guys can do the math. But it's like the I'm making fun of them, but I've never sold 1,000 of any of my music. I've had more than 1,000 streams. I've had thousands and thousands of streams, but I've never sold 1,000 downloads or anything, or 1,000 actual CDs. Me and Raina, when we released her 1018 EP, we had 100 CDs pressed, and we ended up giving and selling those. But I can make fun of 1,000, but it's legit numbers. Still, despite their sound being dark and controversial, they hadn't pushed the envelope enough and still hadn't developed into the full-on black metal band they were to become. Before that would happen, significant changes would be made to Mayhem's... Like Pepe's our fucking liaison to Sweden. How's Bjork doing? Like he's friends with Bjork. Go ask Bjork how she's doing. Now, Pepe.
lineup. In 1988, Monheim left the band and was replaced by Jan Axel Bloomberg, otherwise known as Hellhammer. Maniac, who had established himself as a competent vocalist on Death Crush, would also leave the band, and his replacement would help change the direction of Mayhem and black metal forever.
A man named Dead.
In 1986, an introverted 17-year-old from the south of Stockholm, Sweden, started a band known as Morbid. This man was Per Pelle Olin, otherwise known by his pseudonym Dead. Morbid only released 1 demo with Dead, known as December Moon, released in 1987, but this was more than enough to showcase the potential that Dead had as a vocalist. His voice was dark and menacing, even at 18 years old, and even though this 4-track project was basically a raw experiment as opposed to a polished piece of work, it was more than enough to show what Dead was capable of doing. After this demo was released,
I do want to go. I kind of want to go back and address something when they were talking about how the engineer didn't know how to mix black metal, and so it was unmixed, unmastered, and so many times you find these like, you know, these cult albums that create like a cult following. They were recorded in the shittiest gear, fucking not mastered, not mixed properly, and just sent out, and it's part of their allure. And I think he alluded to that, you know, which made it sort of stand out. And because it was unmixed, unmastered, it was just this raw music. It kind of stood out on its own and was unique in that matter. There was what's the name of that one dude? I have some South American artists and some African artists who did the same thing. He like kept a 4-track recorder in his fucking like hut, and he recorded in his hut, and he lived in the jungle, and like with a tribe and shit. And it's just amazing music. I can't remember the name of the albums and people because I'm fucking burnt out. But hey, you know, she's from the island. She's taking care of her daughter. There you go. See, Mike Pepe knows. Listen, I didn't say he didn't. I'm just saying, fucking. He's like the only one we. That's not true. I know other Swedes. I know. Fuck. What's Alvin? What's his name? Does he still even stream on here anymore? What's his name? Theodore Alvin? Is that his name? Fuck. Anybody remember? He's Sweden. He's Swedish. He's been on the show.
At least, Allin felt as if Morbid weren't going anywhere, and he wanted to be a part of something bigger and more established. His answer was Mayhem. According to Necrobutcher, Dead sent him a package that contained the Morbid demo, a letter containing his plans for the future, and a decomposing rat. Obviously, this was bizarre, but the demo was definitely good enough. They invited him to join the group, and in 1988, Dead moved to Norway and replaced Maniac as the lead vocalist of Mayhem. It didn't take long for the band members
Theodore
to realize
Alfing.
how strange Dead truly was. They would reflect on this years later in interviews.
I'm not sure I knew Pelle, the other Pelle. Dead Pelle we knew very well, and I guess the whole world, which are interested in Mayhem or in black metal in general, they know the image of Dead in Mayhem and his lyrics and what he stood for. But the private Pelle was a strange guy. The first time I met him, I got angry because I'm
No worries, daters.
light.
Do your thing, baby boo.
I'm enjoying life. He did not. Really did not. He was kind of depressed. Dream way, but that was something he just dressed up and became his bed because he wanted to smell death. And it was an image. He was depressed. He was looking for death.
Oh my god.
Regardless of how morbid and strange he was,
That sounds fucking gross. I need to be close to death. I will sleep with dead birds under my bed. And now I will be close to death. That's some weird shit. And, you know, like, being depressed and shit, it, like, what sucks about success in these manners is you have these artists who are depressed and feel like that, you know, finding success in music is going to somehow make them better. I don't know if that's what fucking Homeboy here was doing, but, like, it never gets better. You really have to work on yourself if you're trying to get over depression. And he seems like he just sort of leaned into it and was like, fuck it, I'm just going to embrace this darkness that lies inside of me, which is very scary and pretty sad, honestly. Someone just subject themselves into that kind of world.
His talent and intensity as a vocalist was undeniable, and his dark image played a big part in transforming, or at the very least, emphasizing Mayhem's aesthetic and sound. By the time Mayhem entered the stage with Dead for the first time in 1990, their image had become darker and more intense. A lot of this boiled down to who Dead was as a person. As stated previously, he was obsessed with the idea of death, and because of this, he would harm himself on stage and around his friends. His bandmates and friends did not like this and were understandably concerned, but Euronymous was fascinated by Dead and his antics and encouraged this kind of behavior to continue. According to the people who knew both Dead and Euronymous, they got on each other's nerves quite a bit. There were stories that they would torment each other, fight with each other, and there was even a bizarre claim that Dead had stabbed Euronymous while they lived together. A lot of these claims are difficult to prove, but the rumors and stories tell us that these two did not get along, and that Euronymous was usually the main aggressor in their disputes. It got to the stage where Euronymous was egging Dead on to take his own life, an idea that he would unfortunately follow through with.
Damn. Dead is dead.
In 1991, Dead, Euronymous, and Hellhammer were living near the small village of Krokstad in a rural house that was in the woods. As previously mentioned, Euronymous and Dead were getting on each other's nerves, and this home was becoming a difficult environment to live in. Hellhammer stated that Dead just sat in his room and became more and more depressed. On the 8th of April 1991, Dead was left alone in the house and decided to take his own life, leaving behind a bizarre note that said, "Excuse the blood." The note also contained some bizarre statements from a man who was clearly in need of some help. These included statements like, "I belong in the woods, and I've always done so. No one will understand the reason for this anyway. To give some semblance of an explanation, I'm not a human. This is just a dream, and soon I will awake." He was only 22 years of age. Euronymous was the first...
That's fucked up. That's shitty, man. To put that much on yourself like that. That sucks. That sucks for him. It was made for loving you, baby. Moving Dutchman, welcome in, my friend. Good to see you here. Welcome in. We're just going over dark metal, black metal out of Norway and Sweden, because Pepe decided to get us rolling in this. So I read the book. I forgot what it's called already again. It's like Burn, Hate, Love. I don't know what the fuck it was called. But anyways, we're learning a little bit more about Mayhem and the antics that they got up to.
First one to come home and find him, and his reaction was bizarre. As stated earlier, he was obsessed with how dark and morbid Dead was, and to come home and find out that he had taken his own life was actually a pleasant surprise for Euronymous.
Moving Dutchman! Dude, 30 months, bro. 30 fucking months. Thank you so much for that sub, my friend. And let's get some fucking shit going on. Oh shit, I don't even have this on there. It's MD. But that's okay. I got you. Thank you.
Hello,
okay. We got
Dutchman.
two of them going.
This
He's gonna get
is
double.
Gandalf. Thank you
I'm
for
content
all
but
that
tired.
you do for this channel.
Fair enough, Moving
and
Dutchman.
always remember, a Moving Dutchman is never late, nor early, but arrives precisely when he means to.
He'll probably go again. I should know that, but it's okay. Moving Dutchman! Thank you so much, Moving Dutchman. Thank you for gift subbing Robbie, the mod, our mod here. I appreciate it. And Robbie, don't worry about that. It's all good, man. I'm not tripping on you knowing all the ins and outs. It's fine. I want you guys to know I've won an award. A music award. Yeah, they had to reschedule Moving Dutchman because they couldn't find a singer. They couldn't find a babysitter for their 1-year-old. So it's all good. They're going to reschedule. They'll be back. Now we're just doing this for now. Okay. We're going to get back to the doc.
So much so that before calling the authorities, he went to a local shop and purchased a disposable camera that he used to take pictures of Dead's body. He also allegedly took some of
Pull it up. Pull it up, Moving Dutchman. Pull it up.
his bones and made necklaces out of them, a story that the band has since confirmed to be true. The next day, Euronymous called Necro Butcher and informed him of Pele's death. In an interview with The Guardian in 2005, he explained what it was like to get the news. Astein called me up.
We'll do that. Boom, baby. We'll do that after we get done with this subject. Because I don't want to have to edit that out of the video. Thank you, Moving Dutchman. Mwah, kisses.
Next day and says, Dead has done something really cool. He killed himself. I thought, have you lost it? What do you mean cool? He says, relax, I have photos of everything. I was in shock and grief. He was just thinking how to exploit it. So I told him, okay, don't even call me before you destroy those pictures. Euronymous claimed that he would get rid of the pictures, but he never did, and Necro Butcher ended up leaving Mayhem because of this. This meant that half of Mayhem were now gone, and it seemed as if the band would naturally fade away, but Euronymous had other plans, and if anything, he was only getting started. In his eyes, the death of Pele was a positive turning point for both Mayhem and black metal. He started to go on a crusade to preach the importance of black metal and what it meant to be a part of this genre, using the death of his former bandmate to his advantage and claiming that Dead took his own life because black metal had become too trendy and commercial. Now, it should be noted that Dead was definitely critical of certain artists, and he believed that bandwagoners were a very real thing in the metal community. But while he opposed trends, he didn't necessarily oppose the idea of Mayhem or other black metal bands becoming commercially successful. In 2016, a former pen pal of Dead, who had direct correspondence with him, released a collection of letters that he had sent to him while he was alive. These letters were pretty revealing, and we learn a lot about Dead by reading them, but one thing is for sure, he was very focused on the sales and success of Mayhem. Like any passionate musician, he wanted his music to do well, and he constantly referenced his distribution plans, the sales figures that Mayhem were achieving, and other black metal bands that were doing well at the time. The reason I'm making this point is that Euronymous wanted people to believe that Dead took his own life because black metal was becoming too successful, and that simply wasn't true. It pretty much goes without saying, but Euronymous used Dead's passing to further his own agenda and emphasize his own elitism. He was able to convince people that black metal was something worth dying for, and he now had an actual martyr to go along with his story. And it worked. With his newfound notoriety, Euronymous opened up a record store in the summer of 1991, known as Helvete, or Hell in English. He also used this store as the headquarters for his record label, Death Like Silence Productions, which was relatively inactive before Helvete opened up, but it was now ready to fully embrace and support the black metal revival. The store also served as a location where like-minded musicians could meet, which helped Euronymous revive Mayhem from the ashes by finding suitable replacements. By 1992, they had a full lineup again, and they were ready to resume recording.
I don't understand
Rush, otherwise known as Blackthorn.
What was that basement? Was that like the record store? I don't understand that image of like that weird basement. I don't know what the fuck that was all about.
Joined as a guitarist, and Attila Chihara became their new lead vocalist. They still needed a bassist, however, and unfortunately for Euronymous and for Mayhem, the person they chose for that spot would not only play for the band, but would also help set off a chain of events that would destroy the band.
Uh-oh. What's gonna happen next? W.S.E.G. I don't want to say that.
In 1991, an 18-year-old known as W.S.E.G created the one-man group known as Burzum. A year later, in 1992, he released a self-titled project under that name, and it was clear from the get-go that Varg was an exceptionally talented, well-rounded musician who at 19 years of age was crafting some of the best atmospheric black metal of his time. At this stage, Euronymous had created what was described as a black metal inner circle, and he was the de facto leader of it. It was a small clique of musicians, and in Euronymous' case, it was a great way to source potential talent for Mayhem, and W.S.E.G, being one of the most talented young musicians in the scene, was a perfect fit for the band. He joined as a bassist in 1992. Euronymous was more powerful than ever. His band, his label, his store.
He was more powerful than ever. But that is cool though. Like I always like fuck it. Anytime that there's young people who can just do it all themselves, it always makes me like, oh, you sons of bitches. Even though I was that young person who could do it all myself, it just still bothers me. It's like I was very young when I could play multiple instruments and just create my own music. I didn't need anybody. It's been a really long time, it's been since I was like 16 or 17. But it still bothers me for some reason. I'm just like, you young little shit. What are you doing? Anyways, I just had to sit there and put my gripe in it.
And his inner circle were all working in his favor. He had essentially created a well-oiled machine that was especially designed for him, and because of this, he started to make a list of rules and regulations that you had to follow in order to be a real member of the scene.
Oh my god, that's so lame. That's the lamest shit. You have rules. Here are the guidelines. You must drink blood. You have to sacrifice a cat, a bat, and a hat. I hate it when there's like rules to these stupid little. It's like,
why are you gay?
That's all I could think.
The main rule was that you had to be a Satanist. He didn't even care about what kind of metal you were making. As long as you practiced actual Satanism,
Okay.
he considered you a part of the
Who are
black
you,
metal
Doctor?
scene. He
Goddamn
said,
right.
if a band cultivates and worships Satan, it's black metal. In a way, it can be ordinary heavy metal or just noise. What's important is that it's satanic. That's what makes it black metal.
Look, he's putting rules on. Now you have, but this is what I was saying earlier. Like these guys were legit, as were Doja Cat and like Travis Scott, and who else is using like demonic imagery right now? Is it Lil Durk? No, Lil Durk's not. Fuck, I can't remember. But I feel like these people nowadays that it's like an image thing and not so much like this is what they're doing. But it could be. They could be worshiping Satan. Who fucking knows, right? Who fucking knows? Come on, don't leave the gay boy wonder. Oh yeah. Lil Nas X. That's right. Okay, gay boy was not liked by our Automon. Okay, it's fine, Robbie. If Robbie allows it, then we're gonna allow it. Since Robbie is a part of the community, a part of our community and the alphabet community, I'm gonna let it ride. I probably would have let it ride anyways, but Robbie made me feel better about it. Yeah, Lil Nas X. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right, Samo. Thank you very much for that. Samo. Yeah, so like I just feel like they're using it as an image, as a rejection of Christianity. A lot of people these days blame religion, especially Christianity, as part of the oppressive nature that they perceive our culture to be, right? So it was the Christian conservatives, right, that were trying to who started this whole cancel culture. I think so. Like when you talk, especially when it comes to music. I mean, even if you think back to jazz, right? Even jazz, the conservatives were just like, that's the devil's music. You got to listen to Bach or Mozart or whatever the fuck. And jazz comes along, it's the devil's music. And then fuck it, blues, jazz, rock and roll, all this is the devil's music. Over the years, it's constantly being barraged. So I feel like it's just sort of a rebellion. Whereas these motherfuckers right here, Mayhem, these guys were actually like, it's part of the bylaws. If you want to be a part of this fucking scene, you gotta love Satan. You got a fucking dick swing on Satan's fucking balls and wiener. It's crazy. It's crazy. But again, these are legitimate fucking psychos who are out here fucking worshiping Satan and doing crazy shit and trying to gain power, of course.
Another strange rule he had was that his listeners had to be deemed worthy to listen to Mayhem's music. In multiple interviews, he talked about listeners who were unworthy and therefore should not listen to black metal.
There's a big demand for the album, and it has gone over 15,000 NOK or $300 on the black market. $300 for an album?
Og den har jo gått for opp til 1.500 kroner på svarte markedet. Og
we feel when the album was first released, only 20 to 30 people deserved to own it. Shut the fuck up. I hate this guy.
Vi mener at den gangen den skiva kom ut, så var det kanskje en 20-30 mann.
The rest of the people that got to own it are a bunch of idiots. See, I fucking hate this guy. Like, this guy is so up his own ass. You can tell that he is now like on a mission to gain power and notoriety. Like, I just don't like this guy, right? Like, I don't like who this person is.
Noen som fikk tak I plata som fortjente å eie den, og resten av de som fikk tak I den en hel haug med idioter.
This kind of elitism gave the genre an alluring but exclusive energy that added to the already insane image that black metal had, but probably did more harm than good and stopped potential fans from enjoying these artists' work. However, a lot of people were willing to follow these guidelines, and it did nothing but add to the cult leader-like status that Euronymous had created.
Right. Next is going to be like, now I must fuck all your girlfriends. If you want to be a part of this scene, you must let me fuck your girlfriends.
He was on top of the totem pole, and his ego was at an all-time high. Understandably, tensions started to rise and Euronymous' image became a confusing one, with some people thinking that he was a god, while others believed that he was an egomaniac on a power trip. Many members of the black metal community started to criticize his way of thinking. One of these critics was W.S.E.G, who still worked and associated with Euronymous, but that did not stop a power struggle from brewing. It's widely believed and reported that W.S.E.G wanted the power that Euronymous had, but with him owning the store, the band, and the label, the cards were all in his hands. Whether this power struggle theory is true or not, it was fueled by an insane chain of events that would ultimately lead to a murder.
That's what I'm talking about. God damn it, Pepe. We want murder and mayhem, not fucking doom dances with no murder and mayhem. Well, that doom dance was amazing. The death of Euronymous.
It's not surprising that black metal wasn't the most commercially successful genre of music in the early 90s. The exclusive nature and the abrasive sound made it a difficult genre to be a part of, and in the eyes of some of the musicians, the only way to really promote it was to embrace this stereotype further and generate enough controversy so that journalists would write about black metal. According to a blog that W.S.E.G wrote in 2004 while he was in prison, he hatched a plan with Euronymous to promote the Helvete store and attract more fans to the genre. Under his pseudonym, W.S.E.G gave an interview to a Norwegian newspaper, and in it, he claimed that he was responsible for the burning of a church and that he had killed a man in the town of Lillehammer. In 1992, almost a dozen churches were burned down in Norway, and in many cases, the culprit was still a mystery. On top of this, a man actually was murdered in 1992 in Lillehammer, but this was done by another black metal musician known as Bard Faust. That did not stop W.S.E.G from taking credit for these crimes, at least anonymously.
See, like, you can tell, like, it starts off as, like, a real thing. And then you have assholes and ego, and they're, like, turning it into, like, this exclusive club. And then you got people who are fucking just clout chasing, and now it's turned into, like, oh, we gotta go murder people and burn down churches. And then, I don't care. I don't care how that sounded coming out of my mouth.
This interview served as a confession that members of the black metal community were responsible for these church burnings, and the intention was to make the interview as provocative as possible so that it would promote black metal to the masses. Well, it essentially worked. A media spotlight was now on the genre, but there was also a target on their heads. W.S.E.G was quickly arrested under suspicion of committing these crimes, along with other members of the black metal community, and allegedly, Euronymous' parents told him to shut down the shop as to avoid any unnecessary attention, meaning their misguided attempt at some free promotion was essentially an utter failure. W.S.E.G was eventually released in March of 1993, and at this stage, he was essentially done with Euronymous. They had already had a dispute about money a year prior, and this was the tip of the iceberg. He explains his growing dislike for Euronymous in the same blog post that he wrote about the interview. Euronymous had made a complete fool of himself by closing down the shop, and most of us agreed that he was a damn wimp and an idiot. I was angry at him for not taking advantage of the situation, which was why I had done that silly interview in the first place, and I didn't want anything more to do with him. As far as I was concerned, he didn't exist anymore. For some months, this dislike for Euronymous spread in the metal scene, as more and more people understood what a moron he was, and he blamed me for all of this, and started to hate me. He believed it was my fault that people lost their respect for him. In a sense, he was right, as I certainly didn't keep my opinions a secret, but I think he brought that upon himself. He was simply disclosed by the way he reacted to the heat. He had made a fool of himself. Further, when the media wrote all that crap about me, it made him feel less important. Suddenly, he was no longer the main character in the hardcore metal scene. As he saw it, that too was my fault. According to W.S.E.G, Euronymous was so angry that he hatched a plan to kill him, and when W.S.E.G caught wind of this, he wanted to confront Euronymous and put this behind him. They had a contract that W.S.E.G needed to sign, and Euronymous invited him to meet him in person. Instead of setting a time and a place, W.S.E.G just drove to Oslo unannounced with Snore, the guitarist for Mayhem at the time. When they arrived at the apartment, an insane series of events unfolded, and there are multiple different accounts of what happened. So for the sake of being fair and thorough, we'll run through the different
Here we
possible
go.
scenarios.
This is what
First,
we wanted.
there was W.S.E.G's retelling of the night, which he wrote about in this blog post, but he also did an interview where he essentially recounts a similar scenario.
Oh God, that's like one of my biggest icks is like fucking falling in glass and just glass everywhere. Like just having to pull glass out of your skin, or like there was this movie, oh my God, what was it called? Was it May? Was that the name of the movie? It's like this girl kind of goes crazy and she just starts rubbing broken shards of glass into her eyeball, and I'm just like, oh my God. Ah. Awful. He stabbed him in the skull. Do you know what kind of hatred that you have to have for someone to stab them in the skull? Do you know what kind of a vitriol, just disdain, and the amount of power that it takes to pierce the brain and the skull? Like, that's insane. Unless he stabbed him, maybe he stabbed him in the temple. But like, that's a lot of pressure. And I understand that he was probably operating under duress and, you know, self-defense. But, dude, that's crazy to stab someone in the fuck. How do you calm someone down after they just watch you stab their bandmate? It's like, bro, you just stabbed someone in the fucking head. And you want me to be calm? Of course he's running away from you. You're stabbing somebody in the fucking skull.
The car keys, I opened the car, and we drove back.
And then we just drove away. No big deal.
So in this situation, W.S.E.G is essentially pleading a form of self-defense, but it's important to note that in the blog post, he admits that Euronymous attempted to run away multiple times and that he was angry at his cowardly behavior. I gave chase, stabbed him, and was a bit surprised when he ran out of the apartment instead. It made no sense to flee, and it made me angry to know that he had started the fight, but the moment it didn't go his way, he decided to flee instead of fighting like a man. Such is always something I have disliked strongly. He had showed his intention to kill me, and even though he was no longer a direct threat to me, there and then, I did not feel any bad for killing him. His cowardice had made me angry, and I saw no reason to let him live. Not when he had showed his intent to kill me. Had I let him live, I would only let him have another attempt at my life later on. This blog post made the self-defense theory more difficult to justify.
If I wouldn't have killed him then, we would have done it later. That sounds like straight up just murder. That sounds like murder. You went into someone's house and then they tried kicking you out, literally. So you stab them, and then as they're leaving and you're no longer in danger, they're fleeing, you chase him and stab. That is not self-defense. Sounds like he went there with like premeditated thoughts.
And it's important to remember that this is coming from the man who actually committed the murder, which is obviously a very biased source. What's important about this blog post and Varg's confession in general is that he claims that he was the only person responsible for the death of Euronymous and that he had no original intention to kill him. This is a vital piece of information because the other account of this night is wildly different. Both Varg and Snor were eventually arrested for the murder of Euronymous, and the police wanted a confession from both of them. At first, Snor denied having any involvement in the crime, but eventually he changed his story and he admitted that Varg had planned to kill him all along and that he persuaded Snor into being an accomplice. This is the story that the jury bought, and Snor was sentenced to 8 years in prison, while Varg was sentenced to 21 years in prison, a sentence that included charges for arson, as he was also convicted of multiple church burnings that happened a year prior. The answer probably lies in between both of these stories, and it wouldn't be surprising if there was indiscrepancies and inconsistencies in both of these accounts. By the sounds of it, Snor was probably in the wrong place at the wrong time, but Varg's self-defense claim is also quite flimsy when you zoom out. But the result was the same. Euronymous was dead, and the black metal community and Mayhem would never be the same again. It was a sad tale of ego, power, and what it all ultimately leads to, death.
The album that ended it all.
At this stage, I'm sure you're asking yourself why we haven't talked about actual music for almost 20 minutes. And the answer to that is there was barely any Mayhem music to talk about. Throughout all of this carnage and all of this bloodshed, Mayhem hadn't released an official studio album. They had some demos, recorded rehearsals, and live shows, but it wouldn't be until 1994, a year after Euronymous was buried, that Necrobutcher and Hellhammer came together to finally release their first album, De Mysteries Dom Satanos, a Latin phrase that means about the mysteries of the Lord Satan, a strangely fitting name given the circumstances. This may have been the best thing that Mayhem ever made, and it was one of the most culturally significant and important black metal albums of all time. It was dark, fast-paced, well-crafted, and thought-provoking. It was the culmination of 7 years of absolute insanity, and it had a baffling lineup. Almost everybody we talked about had a part to play on this album. Hellhammer supplied the drums, Attila Chihara was the vocalist, Dead and Necrobutcher were credited writers, Varg was the bassist, and Euronymous was the guitarist. After everything that had happened, after all of the fights, the insults, the suicide, and the murder, they were all together for a final time. Mayhem are still active today, with Necrobutcher being their only original member left, but nothing would top this album. It was truly a phenomenon, and it's one that I highly recommend you listen to. A group of men in their early 20s had changed the landscape of metal forever, but lives were ruined and destroyed in the process. A sacrifice that I'm sure most of them were unhappy with, but some of them probably didn't mind.
Oh, there's that smile. Look at that cute little smile. That's pretty intense, man. That's pretty intense. A whole scene that's just wrapped around fucking just death and church burnings and ego and trying to create cults and fucking, it's wild, man. It's wild. It's so like these behaviors always, it reminds me of GG Allin, which we were going to talk about next. And GG Allin, he was just the next. He was the evolution of punk and rock. in the most just degenerate manner. What's going on here? Why is this shit not working? Here we go. The following content may contain suicide or self-harm. Okay, God, what the fuck?
Now, do you honestly believe that you're a charismatic figure?
I believe that I am the king. I am the Messiah.
My body is a rock and roll temple.
Rule the rock and roll underground. I'm bringing us to a revolution against the government, against the police, against any form of society that is trying to put us down and restrict us in any way, shape, or manner. You cannot conform.
You fucking murder junkies! Let's fucking go! Let's go.
Although he was in a genre and era that was wrapped in controversy on a consistent basis, GG Allin was on a different level entirely. His antics, opinions, and music made him one of the most controversial and talked about figures in the punk scene during the 80s and early 90s. And today, over 25 years after his death, Allin is still talked about constantly in the world of music.
Also, the Murder Junkies still tour because his brother was the guitarist. So they still tour and perform, but they don't throw feces at people.
Everything about his life, his upbringing, and his artistry was bizarre. He was described as a genius by some and a complete degenerate by others. Some people...
I would say he wasn't a genius. I would say more degenerate than genius, but can someone who is unwittingly just a embodiment of a scene, just existing is a form of genius? Is that a thing? Just a form of existence is genius? Because it wasn't like this dude was like this super brilliant person, and the music isn't all that great either. It was just that he was wild and on drugs and crazy. and as they gained more popularity, his antics, people wanted to go to the show and see people get punched. They didn't want to get punched. People wanted to see him fucking smear feces all over his face. It's like this was his whole shit.
People idolized him. Some people hated him. But during his short time on this earth, nobody could take their eyes off of GG Allin.
Those lines are probably poop. Like, the documentary that's really good on this, it was done by Todd. What's the guy's name who directed The Hangover? Todd Phillips. Todd Phillips did a documentary on GG Allin as his NYU, like an NYU project, maybe his master's project. I don't fucking know. But he did it while he was in college. And it is a phenomenal documentary. You should definitely go check it out. Todd Phillips is known for comedies, but like this shit is fucking crazy. He was able to film all this stuff that he did. It's a great documentary. If you want to know about GG Allin for real.
The earliest indication that Allin's upbringing was far from normal comes from his name. He was born Jesus Christ Allin on the 26th of August, 1956 in New Hampshire. That name alone should tell you that his parents were some strange individuals.
Yeah.
Specifically his father, Merle Allin, who stated that Jesus had visited him and told him that his new son would be similar to the Messiah, thus giving him the name. This insane childhood would help form GG into the man he would soon become, and it is a pivotal part of the story. The best way to tell you about Allin's childhood and his erratic father is in his own words. He wrote a 1,200-word essay titled The First 10 Years that details his strange upbringing and gives us insight into how hard his life was as a kid.
Damn.
The first 5 years of my life were infested with sickness and violence. It consisted of living in a log cabin in the northern woods of New Hampshire with father, mother, and brother. It was an extremely real, primitive, antisocial existence with no running water, little heat, and unbearably claustrophobic. We boiled water, laundered, and would bathe in a very tiny, chipped sink. I was immensely sick with asthma, always fighting to breathe amidst emotionally uncomfortable conditions with a cabin where the wall colors were that of the ever-peeling paint strips. We lived in darkness. Father hated life. He also didn't care much for the company of other people. The surrounding air was suffocated in destruction. We were more like prisoners than a family. We were prisoners to Father, and Father was a prisoner of himself.
Jesus.
From this essay, you can tell that his father made his family's life hell, and his mother, Arletta Gunther, was getting increasingly worried that he was going to do something drastic.
God damn, dude. That's fucking wild, man. Somebody, you're just basically holding people prisoner under the guise of love and family. That's fucking wild.
To either Gigi or his older...
But you don't get divorced. Never get divorced. You are not. Never leave him. Never leave him. Stay. You'll never do better. You will always be a slave to the abuse.
Older brother, who was also named Merle. This led to her taking her 2 sons and fleeing the log cabin while her husband was at work.
Well, look at that. Look at that. Look at Mama Allin out there fucking sticking up for her kids.
Arletta would take them from a dire situation to a slightly less dire situation. Gigi claimed that she was attracted to a certain type of guy and that these men would often make their lives difficult, but it was at least better than the insane life they had before their father. Gigi's mother would have his name legally changed from Jesus to Kevin and had him and his brother enrolled in a high school in Vermont. During their time in high school in the 1960s, Gigi and his brother Merle would get up to all sorts of trouble that would foreshadow their chaotic music careers. Allin said in an interview that their childhood was very chaotic, full of chances and dangers. We sold drugs, stole, broke into houses, cars, did whatever we wanted to for the most part, including all the bands we played in. People even hated us back then.
You remind me of the voice from Murder Party from Jackbox. Yes. What is your guess?
While this was happening, Allin was being inspired by bands like the Beatles, the New York Dolls, Alice Cooper, the Dave Clark Five, and the Ramones. Merle and Gigi would continue their illegal antics for the duration of this.
I mean, who didn't sell drugs when they were in high school? Come on, man. Come on, man.
60s and most of the 70s. But
look at it's Young Bubbles. It's Young Bubbles in the back here. Look, when Bubbles was a young man hanging out with the murder junkies back here, look at it's Bubbles from the Trailer Park Boys. There he is, guys. Young Bubbles.
These influences would lead them to creating a number of short-lived bands that would create the blueprint for GG Allin's music and image.
Rock and roll.
GG Allin's discography is a vast...
This is the best looking I've ever seen GG Allin, with the shaved face. Look at him, he has hair. He definitely looks like a fucking waterhead, though. Definitely coming from some funky jeans. That gene pool was... he wasn't a bad looking dude, I guess. He wasn't too bad looking.
Poorly produced mess.
But smash or pass? I'd pass.
Yes, with a lot of great hidden gems filled with interesting songs and a lot of duds that are essentially non-starters. It would take hours to properly cover in detail the amount of music this man has made, but the first few bands he was a part of is an essential part of his history. In the mid-teens, Allin formed the band Little Sisters Date with his brother, and the band primarily covered rock songs at the time. This wouldn't last long, however, as the pair would gradually transition their interest into punk, and their music would reflect that. Little Sisters Date lasted around a year, and was one of his many short-lived projects. Other brief bands included Malpractice and Strip Search, and it's evidence that his chaotic behavior and nature was the driving force behind these bands falling apart. However, his work with the band The Jabbers was arguably the most important part of Allin becoming who he was. He was with them from 1977 to 1984, and in those 6.5 years, GG Allin and The Jabbers would release some interesting music, especially the band's first album, titled Always Was, Is, and Always Shall Be. This album, released in 1980, was an 11-track project that was less than 30 minutes in length, but there were a lot of interesting notes to take from it. Allin's voice sounded much healthier than what we're used to. The songs were a lot slower, and there were elements of pop in some of the tracks. Of course, the lyrics were at times controversial and bizarre, but this was nothing in comparison to what he would go on to do in the world of music. In fact, this is one of the only times where it seems like GG was genuinely trying to appeal to some kind of a market or audience.
Like he actually gave a fuck. The time when GG Allin actually gave a shit. Yeah, I can definitely hear it. Wait until you hear fucking the Murder Junkies. He sounds like shit. Smoking like 10 packs of cigarettes a day, doing cocaine, and drinking fucking 4 bottles of whiskey. It'll fuck your day up. It'll fuck your voice up, too.
In his later years, Allin would challenge and fight his audience in many different ways, whether it be by literally trying to fight them, or challenging them with his controversial opinions or hard-to-swallow music. But this little GG, who was clearly very inspired by New York Dolls, seemed to actually care about how his music was received, how good it sounded, and how many people were listening. Unfortunately, despite some of the album's promising moments, it essentially came and went. This may have lit a bitter spark under Allin as his antics got progressively crazier from here, and by April of 1984, GG Allin and the Jabbers were no more. It was a surprisingly good run, and strangely, even though Allin would go on to garner a large fan base and a nationally known controversial image, this was the best his music would ever sound from a technical standpoint.
That is very funny to me. This is the best that GG Allin will ever sound because he gave a shit. And then he gave himself over to the gods of rock and roll. And they spit him right the fuck back out.
The quality never increased after this, and some critics and fans would say that that was for the best, while others would say that it was an example of his squandered potential. Either way, Allin was on his way to some strange and bizarre times, and he was gonna get there with or without the music.
Yeah, he didn't care. The antics.
WCPX TV Orlando.
Here we go.
Michelle Morrow with tonight's
Here we go.
Meteorologist Pamela Kister. And Mike Storms with sports.
Mike Storms.
This is News Night 6.
Look at those dance moves, baby.
Looks pretty tame tonight, but what happened here last night would make most of us sick. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining News Night 6. The club owner says it happens in big cities everywhere. Last night it happened in Orlando. Something you would never expect to see in public.
Never.
And in the end, 2 men arrested on charges almost beyond belief. News Night 6 reporter Shepard Smith joins us live outside the club Space Fish on Church Street with this exclusive report.
Michelle, we must warn, what you are about to see and hear is quite graphic, but it's true. Happened at the club Spacefish behind me last night.
Oh my.
A band called GG Allin and the Murder Junkies performing at a club that prides itself, in its words, on having shows on the cutting edge. People paid $7 to watch a man defecate into his own hand while he was nude. And that is just the beginning.
The Jabbers may have disbanded, but Allin was more active in the music scene than ever before. His antics were becoming increasingly extreme, and his drug habits were becoming intense. These probably went hand in hand and helped to create a strangely defining moment in his career. In 1985, at a show in Illinois, Allin took a number of laxatives, and during his performance, he defecated on stage. From around 125 to 20 at this point. But that small audience were shocked and started running for the door as quickly as they could.
Ugh. motherfucker took laxatives so he could fucking shit and I could imagine getting hit by GG Allin poo. I would fucking throw up.
Owners and security.
It'll be like that scene in Stand By Me where he's at the pie eating contest and fucking at the end of it he just starts vomiting and then everybody starts vomiting. It's just this one big puke fest. That's what it would be. I would just start puking, then the next guy would puke, and then GG Allin would come and bathe in our vomit. And it would be like a collective ceremony where we're all sharing in the spirit of rock and roll. Puke and poop.
Security tried to stop him, but unsurprisingly, nobody wanted to go near the shit-covered psychopath who was now throwing his excrement around at every poor attendee he could reach. Allin and his bandmate fled the scene, but were later arrested. Surely, this was a once-off, based on the crowd reaction, the arrest, and the damaging impact on GG's career. But no, this was only the beginning. GG seemed to love this reaction, and if anything, he wanted more. This was the first time he did something like this, but he would go on to do it many more times all over the country. His antics got more extreme, his drug habits got more intense, and the character of GG Allin...
Look at his tattoo. His tattoo is a big old needle that's pointing to his vein here.
was in full effect. The world was about to be informally introduced to punk's most insane icon. After this show, Allin recorded some music with another band, the Texas Nazis. At this point, his music was more intense, counterculture, and sounded nothing like the music he made 5 years ago. It was a stark contrast and a great representation for where GG was in his bizarre career.
The beginning of the end.
In 1989, GG Allin was arrested for assault on a female friend of his, and he was sent to prison where he stayed from December 25th, 1989 to March 16th, 1991. A lot happened in this period of time. For one, GG Allin and the Murder Junkies was formed, which would go on to be the most successful and discussed band Allin was ever a part of. He also wrote the GG Allin Manifesto while in prison, a mission statement of sorts that detailed Allin's opinions on the music world, the political climate in America, and the reasoning behind his non-conformist nature. In the manifesto, he writes, "If you believe in the real underground of rock and roll, then now is the time to do something about it. The time is now to overthrow the current situations and declare war on the record companies, radio stations, publications, and anyone who promotes the whole so-called scene as it now stands. We need to destroy it all and take it back from the corporate phonies and conformists. But action must be taken now and blood must be spilled."
See, that's the theme today, is that these musicians who were, standing up for their own ideologies and pushing it, like, these people fucking believed it. You know what I mean? Like, they believe what they were doing. And whether it was right or wrong, they were in it, baby. And that's what, there's a sort of beauty and purity to it. As disgusting as throwing feces is, or stabbing someone in the fucking brain, it's there's a purity and beauty to it that these people were all in for their art. And now, there's gross and horrifying degeneracy going on here, but underneath it, I think there is something beautiful about people who go all in on whatever it is that they're doing. And GG Allin and Mayhem, they went all fucking in.
It was obvious that GG had a clearer vision of what he wanted to achieve and how he wanted to achieve it. When he was eventually...
he had a nice little bod going on there, though. Nice little bod. Little bod going on there.
Eventually released from prison, he broke the terms of his parole almost immediately and went on tour with his...
Why is he crying? How is he crying about fucking rock stars puking and pooping? No animals were hurt. Well, that we know of.
newly formed band. It was around this time that a young and ambitious filmmaker showed interest in creating a documentary about Gigi. This filmmaker was Todd Phillips. He went on a tour with the band and filmed some of the most bizarre GG Allin moments ever caught on tape. It showed the depraved side of him and a slightly different side, an articulate, calmer, more sober Gigi who somewhat reflected on his actions and, at least in his own mind, justified his behavior. It was probably the best piece ever made about Allin, and it's not surprising that Todd Phillips would become as successful as he became. Ironically, his highest grossing movie was about another depraved lunatic who hated society, but I digress.
Dude, I forgot Todd Phillips did The Joker. That movie was so that was so punk rock too. That was so good.
At this stage, GG Allin was a notorious and arguably famous or infamous musician. He was selling out shows, creating headlines everywhere he went, and he ended up on very...
Me too, Robbie. That's like one of the only fucking superhero-esque movies that I'm actually excited about is Joker. Tonight, the whole family's going to see... What's the name of that fucking movie we're going to go watch? It's some dumb DC movie that's out right now. What's it called? I hear it's a bit of a musical, so I'm curious. Blue Beetle. Thank you, Robbie. I looked at I am so disinterested in going to see that movie. I don't know, man. After Thanos with the movies, like, it's hard to top that. That was like the pinnacle of that, of Marvel and superheroes. I just can't get past it. I forgot what that was called. Well, whatever those two movies were, the Avengers. But we're going to go see Blue Beetle tonight. We'll see how it goes. I'm not excited, but it'll be a fun time with the family. So, you gotta make sacrifices.
Various different talk shows to discuss his antics, such as Geraldo and The Jerry Springer Show. In 1993, Allin appeared on The Jane Whitney Show in a now famous interview. This would, unfortunately, be Gigi's final interview on television because in that same month, he would die.
Oh. Death.
What's your ultimate idea of a performance, of a fantasy performance?
It's not a fantasy performance, Jane. Come on, everything I do is real. It comes out of my head.
Well, what's your...
I live this life every day. When I'm on stage, it's my therapy. It's not a performance, it's a ritual. And the ultimate performance would be when I have reached my peak, and I'm not there yet, so don't you all clap when I say this. I'll commit suicide, but I'll take your kids with me. When you reach your peak, it's time to die.
I'll kill myself and I'll take your kids with me. I mean, how fucking scary would that be if you're a parent and you're watching this fucking guy who all these young people are fucking following? He's like, I'm gonna do mass suicide with your children. Oh, God. Again, that Christian conservative cancel culture, right? Which is fair. And then, so it's funny when you see, people don't like when their kids are being targeted in such ways. And so you can sort of see how people are freaking out about this whole, transitioning kids as young children. People don't like you fucking with their kids. I don't care what you do with your kids. That's your business. But I certainly would not be cutting off my kid's dick. That's for sure. But if you want to cut your kid's dick off, by all means. This is America, goddammit. And we can do whatever the fuck we want. Well, mostly.
And when do you think your peak's going to be?
Whenever the battle is over, whenever you have lost the power to fight. When you have got the power to fight, you fight. When you lose the power, you kill yourself or I'll kill you.
Are you a happy person?
Jesus Christ.
I'm beautiful.
Gigi always...
He's like fucking a homeless guy with mental issues that people gave a platform to. He's that's like GG Allin. If he wasn't a musician, he would have just been like a fucking the homeless guy who's screaming on the corner covered in his own feces.
Always claimed that he was going to take his own life on stage, in an ultimate act of defiance and performance. But this did not happen. Maybe it could have happened if he lived a little bit longer, but on the 28th of June, 1993, GG Allin died after performing in Manhattan. The show was pretty normal by GG Allin standards. He performed one song, and during the second track, the venue cut the power in an attempt to stop Allin from performing. He trashed the club, defecated on stage, and fought the audience members until eventually going outside and walking aimlessly around the streets of Manhattan. A small number of his audience followed his reckless path as he tried and failed to get a cab a number of times and walked around for around an hour until eventually getting to his friend Johnny Puke's apartment. At the apartment, Gigi, his bandmates, and some of his fans partied for hours, and during this time, Allin took a large amount of heroin and accidentally overdosed.
Oops.
Later, somebody called an ambulance, but it was too late. Gigi was pronounced dead at the scene.
Damn, that's blood on his face right there. That's him. He would like break glass and fucking cut his face and shit. Like, he was the real deal. Marilyn Manson was very much, he did these kind of weird antics too, but he was very much more removed than Gigi was. And Marilyn Manson grew and popularity-wise just overshadowed GG Allin. But when you look at those old videos of Marilyn Manson performing, you see him, he throws like dog shit out into the audience mixed with cookies and shit. He was having people spit on him, like spit on Marilyn Manson. He would have people spit on him, and then he would take his hand all over his bare chest and fucking lick it, dude. Fucking Marilyn Manson. But Marilyn Manson, I like Marilyn Manson still. I gotta run, but have a great weekend, friends. Robbie, thank you so much for being here, my friend. You enjoy your weekend as well, and try not to defecate on any stages and throw it at the audience. Thank you, Robbie. Okay, good boy.
Was 36 years old. It was over.
36.
Gigi's insane life had come to an end, but the party didn't stop there. At his funeral, the mortician was asked to leave Allin's corpse the way it was, decomposing and rotting, as his friends partied around his body, taking drugs, posing with the corpse, and blasting his music. Gigi was buried with a bottle of Jim Beam and headphones that played The Suicide Sessions, an album that GG Allin had made 4 years prior. It was a strange but morbidly fitting way for Gigi to go.
And I believe people were like punching him as well. Like people were like slapping his corpse. I'm pretty sure that people were punching his corpse and shit. Fucking bizarre.
Allin would only become more famous because of this, and although he wasn't as big as some of his contemporaries, his success was nothing short of a phenomenon. A drug-addicted, somewhat confused, self-proclaimed degenerate had etched his way into the Punk Hall of Fame, and he probably didn't even want to be there. His life may have ended, but his legacy would be discussed for decades in a comical but almost respectable fashion. Regardless of what you think, by the time he died, he had left his footprint on the music world.
His footprint on the music world. What's the conclusion?
Well, I'm so impressed. The cover of the new record. Have you heard the cover of his new record? I know. It's him in a casket and the band standing around the casket like... I swear to God.
Gigi still sings. Gigi lives.
Did you ever see Gigi? Did you see Gigi live?
No, I was just too afraid.
It's an amazing
No,
experience.
I could have went one time. I know he was playing, but I just didn't get around to it.
He's like, fuck
There
that.
is so much that I didn't get to talk about when...
By the way, that was Dave Grohl and Kurt Cobain and whoever the bassist name is. That was Nirvana that was talking. For those who are listening on the audio end.
It comes to this man. Like his insanely large discography of music that spanned 2 decades and consisted of over 30 albums and over a dozen bands. like the fact that he had contact with Johnny Cash, or that celebrities and performers like Kurt Cobain, Hank Williams III, Lil Uzi Vert, Eric Andre, and hundreds of other entertainers would talk about him in both a positive and negative light. Or even the fact that he had a strange relationship with serial killer John Wayne Gacy, who he would write to and visit on a number of occasions. Gacy even admitted being a fan of Allin and painted the artwork for one of his albums. These facts and anecdotes are just footnotes in Allin's insane career, and it goes to show how much he did in his short life.
Oh my god. That's actually so fucking punk rock and brutal that he had John Wayne Gacy do his album art. Damn, I didn't know that shit. That is amazing. God damn, GG Allin was fucking incredible. His existence was genius. I don't know if the music, I don't like it. It sucks. But like, as a person that existed in this world, it was genius. And he wasn't a great person, right? Like, this is not the savior. This is not the Messiah. This is a fucking demon. But he was a pure embodiment of his art. And for that, we salute you, GG Allin. GG. R.I.P. GG Allin. Why did he cry?
You don't like this guy. This guy's demonic.
Yeah, he's a
He
demon.
didn't like him, so he started crying.
He cried?
Yeah, he's allowed to cry. He's a sensitive soul.
Jesus Christ. Over GG Allin? Get on my fucking face with
I
that.
had to turn you off.